then if we could take attendance. Yes, today we are.
Okay, Ms. Bergmeyer.
Here.
Ms. Moses. Here. Mr. Green. Here. Ms. Knox.
Here.
Mr. Richards.
Here.
Mr. Drew. Here. Mr. Milson.
All right, forgot how fast I can go. So I'm gonna just make a couple quick agenda changes. Due to the timing with our superintendent search, we are going to discuss briefly before we select our superintendent, the addition of possibly a meeting next week for the board to go in closed session with an attorney to start our creating a contract for our superintendent that we select. And then also it was requested that we switch the Academic Dream Team Award with the reconfirmation of learning plan, just because we do have some people in attendance tonight, so that we can kind of move that along for people. So I'm gonna go forward. So what I discussed with the board, I sent a notification out this afternoon after speaking with our attorney. And to be honest, I actually vastly underestimated how quickly she could turn around a contract for us. So that said, we were hoping to be able to get together as a board to discuss some things with the attorney in closed session, possibly in the next week or so, because otherwise we would be waiting about 2 more weeks until our next scheduled meeting, and that would leave our candidate kind of hanging out there for about 2 weeks. And it is, you know, we do have candidates in multiple races for superintendents and things, so it seems like it was something that maybe we should be a little bit quicker on the draw with. So I wanted to bring that up with the board and see if we could find a time. I'm guessing next week, because we're on short notice for it, to get together for an additional meeting. I would propose Wednesday, because I know that tends to be a day that we already somewhat plan on meetings for, but kind of open the floor up for discussion from other board members.
My Wednesday's not good for me.
Okay.
Just Monday night, I think we got a finance committee meeting, and then Wednesdays, and then I'm good on Tuesday, Wednesday, or Friday, or Tuesday, Thursday, or Friday.
Okay.
Everybody else is there.
Wednesday at 7 or 6:30 or
7
okay, 7
or later.
Yeah.
7 is fine. 7 I can.
I'm free Wednesday, so that's.
Okay.
I'm free Wednesday as well.
Okay,
Are you okay with that, Mr. Drury? Could you make it happen?
Yeah.
Okay.
thank you for the
Thank you.
flexibility. Mr. Richards, is that okay for you?
Yes.
Okay, so we will add that next Wednesday, that is the 19th at 7 o'clock, and that agenda is simply going to just be a very brief, call to order, closed session, and that's it. So, okay. All right, so we are going to move forward. We are selecting likely one of our superintendent candidates tonight. Mr. Silveri is with us once again. And so he was going to provide, since we are kind of at our final determination, a little brief overview of what this process has been.
Thank you. Nice to be back with you one more time. Yeah, just to review, and I'll be brief with this, but as you know, this decision hasn't been reached quickly or easily. It's been a very thorough and deliberate process that's also been inclusive with your stakeholders and very transparent, I believe, too. And we started this way back on February 17th when we held our initial planning meeting. That was when we then gathered feedback from your stakeholders through a survey, had huge participation. Then that enabled us to go ahead and take that feedback that we got and create the candidate profile that identified the type of candidate you're looking for, create the posting. So that we had that posting then on for 5 weeks, and you folks came back together on April 16th to review the applications. You had 23 applicants, as you may recall, and you decided to select 5 to participate in first round interviews. Those folks came back from April 20th through 22nd when you did conduct those first round interviews, got additional feedback from your stakeholders for those. You, on April 23rd, made your selection of the 2 individuals that you wanted to focus on going forward, and conducted those interviews then on April 26th and 27th. Did that in the evening, and during the course of those days, each of the candidates came in on their respective days and met again with various stakeholder groups, students, administrators, staff members, and parents and community members who had the opportunity to ask questions, interact with the candidates, and then provide you yet more feedback for you to consider. And then on May 4th and May 6th, a subcommittee of the board conducted site visits to the home districts of the 2 final candidates, where you were able to interact with people that candidates work for and with, ask questions, and get a sense as to the type of work they've done there. And then we're able to share feedback from those site visits with the other 4 board members. So that gave you a lot of data to consider, which included the original applications that were submitted, cover letters, resumes, the additional materials that the candidates provided to you, the feedback from your stakeholders for the interviews and the stakeholder meetings, your own interview experience and the notes that I know you carefully took for those, and you had a chance to review those as well. And then the site visits too, which gave you a ton of data to consider. You had 2 very highly qualified final candidates, which made it not an easy choice, but that's where you want to be. But you've now had the chance to review all of that information and come here tonight ready to make that decision. So I do want to, I want to thank Sherry and Anita they've been hugely helpful and provided a ton of assistance through all of this. And I want to thank you folks too. You have followed the process to a T, and you've done so very collaboratively, very collegially. I honestly, from a consultant's perspective, I couldn't have asked for more. And so it's been a real pleasure for me, and I greatly appreciate how you've conducted yourselves and kind of involved yourselves in this process. You've done it exactly the right way. And I think because of that, you've primed yourself to make a great decision and make that decision in the right way as well. Anything anyone would like to add or ask?
Okay.
Thank you.
So thank you. So what we're going to do at this point, similar to how we moved forward, moving to our second round interviews, we're going to kind of go around, and each person has the opportunity to indicate the candidate that they would like to select for superintendent. And then, you know, at the end, we will likely have a consensus of, you know, who that individual will be, and look for a motion. Okay. All right. To not put anybody on the spot, I will go first. So I want to thank both of the candidates. I think that they both have tremendous attributes that we could have and utilize here in Anchor Bay. I know that they've dedicated a lot of time to this process, and I appreciate that. And again, you know, I think that, you know, we would be well served with either candidate. So it really was a tough choice. But to kind of cut to the chase, for me, I would like to select Mr. Phil Jankowski. Okay. Mr. Richards?
It's a very difficult decision for me as well. I'd like to also thank both candidates. Both of them would benefit our district. I would like to recommend Phil Jankowski.
Thank you. Mr. Giroux?
Again, I'll echo Ms. Burkmeyer, Mr. Richards, thanks to the two candidates for all the work they put in. It was, and to Mr. Silveri with running this process to bring us down to this hard decision of two very qualified candidates. I don't think we can pick wrong tonight, which is great and a perfect position to be in. So I think it comes down to two different, two great candidates, quality candidates with a couple different leadership styles. But I too will put up Mr. Phil Jankowski.
Thank you. Mr. Green?
I'll echo what everyone else has said. I did do and participate with Ms. Knox and Mr. Richards to the site visits. And I thought those were going to make my decision a little easier. As it turns out, they didn't. They didn't really help, but they didn't make it easier for me for sure. Two quality candidates. And I do again want to thank the parents, the staff, the students, everybody that participated in this process, which quite frankly, I consider to be one of, if not the most important decision I'm going to make as a board member. So it wasn't something I took lightly. I spent most of today reviewing the big stack of information that we have from Mr. Silveri, notes, comments, questions, feedback from the public. However, in the end, with two very quality candidates that kept me awake last night, I think at this point I would support Mr. Jankowski as well.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Knox?
I do want to, like everyone else, thank both of our candidates and their districts during our site visits for their hospitality. We had really enjoyable days. We've been fortunate to have two outstanding finalists for the position. Both are highly qualified and dynamic leaders with different styles, and both are very deserving of this position or any superintendent position. However, the candidate that I believe is best suited to lead Anchor Bay is Mr. Phil Jankowski.
Thank you. Mr. Moses?
Yes, I'd like to thank Mr. Silveri and all the stakeholders that had input. It really did make this decision difficult, and both are very, very high quality, great candidates. But I will support Mr. Phil Jankowski also.
Thank you. And Mr. Middlestaff?
So I reviewed the different candidates, and I was leaning through Mr. Dean, basically because I was pretty impressed with his philosophy of the process of how he does things and knowing the issues we have to face here in Anchor Bay. But I'll go along with the rest of the board with Mr. Jankowski because we should be unanimous on this. And again, as we said, they're both great candidates, although I felt Mr. Dean was more appropriate, but I'll go along with the rest of the board and agree to that same person.
All right, thank you. So at this point, do we have a motion? Does somebody want to make a motion to make an offer?
I'll make a motion to offer the position of superintendent to Mr. Phil Jankowski.
I will second.
Okay, so motion by Mr. Giroux to select Mr. Phil Jankowski, seconded by Ms. Knox. Any further discussion by the board at this point? Okay, seeing none, Mr. Middlestaff, could you please call the roll?
Mr. Giroux?
Yes.
Ms. Knox?
Yes.
Ms. Burkmeyer?
Yes.
Mr. Moses?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Richards?
Yes.
Mr. Middlestate, yes.
Okay, thank you. And I, again, just can't echo enough that this process has gone extremely smoothly with the help of Mr. Silveri. Certainly I cannot take credit for that. And again, he's had tremendous help in our office from Ms. Bannock and Ms. DeCristofaro as well. Mr. Rathbun has been helpful at times as well. And to all the community members who took time to come participate, in our site visits, interact with the candidates, give your feedback to the board. Like somebody said, this is quite frankly probably the most important decision a school board can make, and not every school board member may make that decision at some point. So I'm just very excited for the future for Anchor Bay, and look forward to moving forward in this process. And congratulations to Mr. Jankoski. All right, we're gonna move, like I had mentioned, we're gonna move to the All Academic Dream Team Award.
Mr. LaPerriere, get out. We'll be back tonight.
So
just, there's a mic up there, just hit the button on the bottom.
Mr. Jankoski? I'm sorry,
LaPerriere.
sorry, I got Mr. Jankoski. I'm not gonna let them receive this award and not be on camera. So they're gonna have to come forward.
Absolutely.
They're gonna have to come forward. And face the camera, don't face us.
yeah, face that way.
There we go. That is awesome. Thank you.
All right. Good evening, Board of Education. It is an exciting night for the high school as we get an opportunity to honor two seniors who have worked very hard to be at the top of their class. Each year, the Macomb County secondary principals honor the top seniors from each class, A, B, and C and D combined. We are honoring a total of 95 students from all classes this school year. There are 57 seniors selected from the Class A high schools in Macomb County. This year, Anchor Bay had 2 students selected to the all academic team. On behalf of the Macomb County secondary principals and the Macomb ISD, it is our honor to present Jonathan Taylor, the prestigious 2021 Macomb County All Academic Team Award. And before you clap, I want to read a couple things about Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor attended Ashley Elementary School, my parents fully supported my decision to choose the University of Michigan. I am tremendously grateful for their support. So thank you, Mom and Dad. As I said, his future plans are to attend the University of Michigan and study mechanical engineering. Jonathan serves as the Vice President of the Anchor Bay High School chapter of the National Honor Society. He also serves on his church worship team, playing the piano a couple times a month. And finally, he plays the trumpet in the band and has participated in marching band and solo ensemble festivals for the past 4 years. Other awards that he has received are the post-level winner of the VFW's Voice of Democracy contest in 2018, AP US Government and Politics Course Award, and of course, the Perfect Attendance Award. With that, Jonathan Taylor. All
All right, haven't forgot the next one. Thank you. On behalf of the Macomb County Secondary Principals and the Macomb ISD, it's an honor to present Gianna Maniaci, the prestigious 2021 Macomb County All-Academic Team. Gianna, who attended Lottie Elementary in 5th grade, went on to Middle School South. Her grandfather's here. Right, where's grandfather? Come on over here, grandfather. Robert Morton is here. Mom and dad, Christy and Michael Maniaci. Please come forward. Gianna holds a GPA of 4.380 and scored a 1550 on her SAT. She is also a finalist for the National Merit Scholarship, which there are 4.5 million high school juniors who took the PSAT, which is the NMSC qualifier. The finalists consist of the top 15,000 in the nation. Each finalist is being considered for one of 2,500 scholarships available, totaling $30 million. Gianna was asked, who has influenced you the most in your academic career and how? And again, she says, my parents, Christy and Michael, have influenced me the most. They have pushed me to accomplish things I never would have been able to do on my own. No matter what, I know they will always be there to support me. Gianna's future plans are to attend the University of Michigan and study chemistry. She's been involved with Student Council, Relay for Life, and the National Honor Society. Other awards that she's been recognized by the College Board's Rural and Small Town Program, Honors Biology Course Award, Spanish 2 and AP Government Individual Teacher Award. Congratulations.
We're gonna take like a 2-3 minute break if moms and if parents want to take some pictures.
We have one more award.
Oh.
I'm sorry. All right, thank you. That's just the academic. They actually won 2 awards. So that's the all academic team. So mom and dad and grandpa, if you guys could sit down. Jonathan, I invite you back up. All right. It is now my privilege on behalf of the Macomb County Secondary Principals and the Macomb ISD to present Jonathan Taylor and Gianna Maniaci, the prestigious 2021 Macomb County All Academic Dream Team Award, which is awarded of the top 25 seniors in all classes. These students have an average adjusted GPA of 3.995 and an average SAT score of 1536. The top scholar, who was just featured on Channel 4 this year, had a perfect score of SAT of 1600. Congratulations again to Gianna Maniaci and Jonathan Taylor for their great accomplishments.
So now we will take a 2-3 minute break. If families would like to take some pictures, we can kind of clear this backdrop if we would like for however you guys would like to do that.
So let us.
Give me a thumbs up when you're done. Okay. Okay, we're going to come back. I think our technical issues are resolved. So we're going to move on to the reconfirmation of learning plan. Mr. McDonald's going to present our monthly information.
Yes, good evening, board. Tonight, we're going to once again talk about our reconfirmation of learning plan. And I know it was just a couple of weeks ago when we did this last time, and but we're back again and waiting just a minute to see if we get the PowerPoint, and if not, we will move ahead without it. But each month, if you recall, we have the obligation to talk about our two-way communication rates, to take public comment about the reconfirmation of learning plan, and to same PowerPoint that we've had in the past, and then talk about how we are offering our virtual learning. So as approved last meeting in April, we are continuing with the same plan for the remainder of this school year. And I say that because the plan, as we approve it here in May, it gets submitted to the state. It will be due in the first week of June. So we're actually always a little bit ahead of the game. So the one that we did in April, late April, I submitted at the beginning of May. And then tonight's information will be submitted for June. So that will carry us through our academic year this year. And at the elementary level, we offer an in-person option along with our virtual option. So we will continue to offer both options. Again, also at the preschool level, I should have started there. The majority of our learning is in person. There's a couple unique situations where there are some virtual accommodations made in the pre-kindergarten. We're going to move on to the elementary. Again, where we have the in-person option, K-5 and virtual, separate the teachers for both utilizing Schoology. At the secondary level, we have both an in-person option and a virtual option for the remainder of the year. Again, the virtual option includes live synchronous instruction and asynchronous pre-recorded instruction. Using Schoology, our teachers make connections with those students who are virtual. I have updated the virtual communication rates. I think on the next slide. And again, the weeks run from Tuesday to Wednesday, and today's was not available as usual. We're always a week behind. But if you look at it, we are consistently between 96, 97% two-way communication rates. It's been consistent all year. So it is my pleasure, I guess, to present this to you for the last time this academic school year, and to I guess leave it to you to ask for public comment regarding the confirmation of learning plan. Again, on our website, you can find all of our COVID reporting cases that keep up to date.
So at this point, we will open the floor for parents or guardians of students enrolled in the district are able to comment on our reconfirmation of learning plan. Mr. Sizemore, are there any comments online?
Stephanie Richards.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
So more of a question than a comment. I'm just curious if there's any word, if this is something that's going to go into next school year. I don't know from a state level or just school district even, but like, is there going to be virtual options for the next school year? That's all I really wanted to know.
Okay.
Right. Well, absolutely. It's not part of a reconfirmation plan, but to talk about next year, certainly we've worked on options for remaining virtual next year, having it as an option. We don't know if legislation will require the reconfirmation to learning plan. I know there's been conversations at my level and at the superintendent level that they're discussing not having that next year, but I don't think it's been decided yet. Is that right, Mr. Rathbun? Okay. And but of course we do have plans for a virtual option that will look much different. I've taken feedback from teachers, principals, parents, shared some of it so far with Mr. Rathbun and what it would look like, and that will be out shortly. So there will be an option. It will look different than it does this year.
Are there any other submissions?
Not right now, no.
All right, so I will look for a motion to reconfirm our learning plan.
I'll make a motion.
All right, motion by Mr. Moses,
I'll support.
supported by Mr. Green. Any board discussion? Okay, seeing none, we can call the roll.
Mr. Moses,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Ms. Bergmeyer,
Yes.
Ms. Knox.
Yes.
Mr. Richards.
Yes.
Mr. Drew,
Yes.
Mr. Middleston.
Okay, motion passes. Moving on our agenda towards greater student achievement, Mr. Rathbun is going to discuss a little bit of the updates that we have on facility use by the public or external organizations to the district and how we've been evolving in that realm.
Thank you, Ms. Bergmeyer. Good evening, board. I would like to take this opportunity to briefly update the board on the facility usage of the district. As you may recall, last fall, the board agreed to place a moratorium on the use of facilities by outside groups. This was done in an effort to ensure the safety of both students and staff. With the advent of spring and the easing of restrictions, the district is beginning to open the use of our facilities to outside groups. Please bear in mind that all external groups that utilize our facilities will be required to abide by all MDHHS orders as well as Macomb County Health Department guidance with respect to COVID mitigation measures. Let me begin by addressing our outdoor facilities, including our fields. So as I indicated, all organizations will be responsible for following MDHHS guidelines, including conducting and documenting contact information for guests and participants to enforce MDHHS guidelines while hosting the events on Anchor Bay School District facilities. All persons will be required to wear masks. We have established a cleaning schedule that will sanitize all equipment in all areas of the field before and after all uses. And finally, Anchor Bay School District will only schedule use by outside groups when facilities are not being used by our students. So we would not have our students interacting with students from outside of the district. And that has already begun. With respect to our indoor facilities, the Anchor Bay School District will limit rentals of our facilities to when students are not in the facility. We're targeting reopening for our last day of school for inside the facility of June 16th. Again, all organizations will be responsible for conducting and documenting contact information for guests and agree to enforce and adhere all MDHHS and Macomb County Health Department guidelines while hosting events. All persons will be required to wear a mask. And we'll be establishing cleaning schedules so that after every single use, that particular part of the facility will be cleaned thoroughly before use by another group. Finally, with respect to our aquatic center, the district has reopened on a very limited basis. During week 1, which is this week, of our soft opening, we will extend use of the aquatic center to the public in the morning on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 5:45 till 9:15 a.m. The facility will be cleaned between each session. There are 3 sessions during that period of time, and will be cleaned again at the end of that session in advance of our students coming in to use the facility at 10:30. And they will use that till about 5:30 p.m. in the evening. In week 2, which is next week, we would add additional hours for the public. They would be able to come in and use the aquatic center in the evening after 5:30 until approximately 6:30 p.m. Monday through Friday. Thereafter, with respect to the aquatic center, we will continue to meet and discuss further opportunities to open the facilities to our general public. This information will be posted on the district's website. So please continue to monitor the website for updates. Board, I've included the waivers and the aquatic center schedule in your board packets. Hopefully you had a chance to review those and would be willing to take any questions from the board at this time.
I don't think I have a question. It's more a comment. I'm glad that we're taking the avenues to be able to open those facilities, keep them safe to the best of our ability. And we're still protecting our students as priority number one. But that facility's been closed for a large part of almost a year now, right? So the water aerobics and all those other things that our community and taxpayers have been looking for, I'm glad to hear will be available to them again next week, at least in the morning.
Actually, they can start using it this week in the morning and then next week in the morning and in the evening. Yep.
Okay. Great. We're gonna move on and get an update on the right sizing committee. And that's gonna kind of flow right in if the board is gonna take any action moving forward. So Ms. Bannick, I believe, is going to give us an update on the right sizing committee.
Yes. It's been quite a process, and we'll skip to the first slide just to kind of give a high-level overview, remind everybody. This started in January, essentially, with Mr. Rathbun giving the board an overview of where we were with enrollment and budget, and the need, of course, to be as efficient as we possibly can and look for cost-saving measures moving forward. So in February, we put a written plan together, what that process would look like, the timeline, the type of committee structure we would use, gave that to the board in writing, went on to have an update to the board in public so that you were able to say, yes, you agreed with the structure, and to kind of grant us to move on and ask for volunteers, which we did. And our committee came together. And just a reminder that our committee was made up of parents that represented all levels and each school, special education as well. We also invited our union leaders. We invited some at-large teachers and some at-large support staff. So we had a pretty comprehensive group, and I do believe we have a member here with us. So he can pipe in too. In March, so our committee got to work, and that first step was really to make sure the committee could see the value in right sizing, right? I mean, it's an emotional decision. It's not one that people take lightly. We wanted to make sure if our committee could see the information and go through it and see the value and what this would do for the district, that we would bring that forward back to the board and ask if the board still wanted us to move forward. Again, just knowing it can be emotional, we wanted to make sure we were all on the same page. So after that, the board met and said, yep, go ahead, committee, get back together and start to develop scenarios so that we could start narrowing the focus down. So our committee got back together in April, and they were able to come to consensus on 2 possible scenarios that met some very specific criteria that they had determined, and we have been sharing with the board as well. A written update was provided to the board as well. I just want to be clear that the board was receiving the same information that the committee was receiving. And then, of course, tonight, the hope would be that we would take action. So with that, the next slide is just kind of where we jumped off in April, once you gave us the go-ahead or the green light, if you will, to get down to scenario building. So at that point, we knew it was very important for us to kind of regroup on making sure that we all defined the priorities the same way, so that if one person was saying the least impact on students, we all knew what that definition looks like. What did that really mean? What did equity mean for everybody? And what did long-term savings mean for everybody? And then we got to work scenario building, and along the way, just making sure that everybody had the communication, the documents, the data that would help them to get to that, that consensus building. So when we talk about the priorities, we talked a lot about what was least impact, number of students, how to prioritize those considerations, and what is the most important thing to maintain in each plan that we would bring forward. Throughout this time, I should also let you know that I would bounce between the principals meetings as well, making sure that we were getting good information from the principals, especially the ones that are closest to the buildings. So between the committee and meeting with our principals, we came up with our list of must-haves. That's the next slide. And just again, this was in your board packet, but we wanted to make sure whatever plan we came up with, that each elementary on that equity piece would at least have space for 3 classrooms per grade level. Doesn't mean that you'll have 3 per grade level, but that there would be space for that. Age appropriate kindergarten rooms, dedicated space for our art, music, physical education, Mandarin and STEM, a dedicated computer lab, at least one dedicated space for literacy tutors, a dedicated space for resource room, and dedicated space for special service staff such as OT, PT, special services, speech, some of our ancillary staff. So that was the must-haves. And then again, the committee really refocused their energy on defining what these scenarios had to have, kind of narrowing our focus. Of course, the first one being impact the least number of students. So the less number of families we can impact, the better. Provide room for growth. We had a long talk about that early on in the process, that people were worried that maybe we were doing this whole thing just because of COVID, because the state of Michigan has lost so many students, and there's, you know, kids that have left traditional schooling, but that's really not the case. Our enrollment numbers, as you know, have been trending in a certain way. And our elementary schools, we definitely have some that are grossly underutilized. But we didn't want to cram too many into a place where we didn't have room for growth as well. So that was very important to the committee. Providing equity among buildings. Again, there might be a more popular decision to close a different school, but then you would cram so many students into one, you would have to give up, you know, back in the day when enrollment trends used to go up and down before people could have bond issues, you know, you would put art on a cart and make them travel around, or you'd have, you know, mobile classrooms outside. I mean, that isn't the direction we wanted to go to. And again, we talked a lot about what a great problem it would have, right? Opening a building is not that difficult. If you know, the windfall comes into Anchor Bay, that's fine. We can handle that growth. And then we also wanted to make sure we provide long-term financial savings, that we're making this change and it actually is going to save us the dollars that we want, so that, you know, we can get back to the business of putting the dollars we want into actual classroom learning and the staff and the people that deliver that service. So after we spent time making sure we were all on the same page with defining that, we got to scenario building. And I have to say, our committee did a lot of their own homework, and I certainly gave them reams of paper of enrollment numbers, things of that nature. And so on the next one, Tim, you'll kind of see across the top, we had a long chart, but we kind of separated it by building. And so to build consensus, we kind of started with what schools wouldn't make sense to close, right? If they're going to impact too many students, or they're not going to provide equity, or not fill in space at other places. So it was quickly easy to come to a conclusion that Ashley, Great Oaks, and Lighthouse, they're located in the center of the district. It's a high populated area. Their building capacities are much higher than some of our other schools. And none of them, if they were to close, could fit all into one other building, which would mean you'd impact a lot of students and break up a lot of friend groups and families and ties of that nature. Next slide was McCants. So then we looked at McCants. You know, that's the next lowest building in terms of capacity after those first 3, but you look at where McCants is located. It's a border school. It's a larger geographic area. You're already pulling kids from areas. If we were to close that school and ship everybody, you know, where they'd be on buses a lot longer, you might be adding more. The capacity at that building is still too much to fit inside one other building, at least one that would make sense from a transportation standpoint. So we got rid of that one as a potential scenario to provide to the board. So that leaves really your last 3 are your smallest schools. So we focused on Lottie. Lottie, of course, cannot fully fit inside either Naldred or Sugar Bush and meet all of our needs of room for growth, 3 per grade level. It's also in an area that also has a lot of subdivisions and neighborhoods and growth that we're seeing there. So it soon became one that we were able to eliminate, which brought us down to Naldred and Sugar Bush. Our 2 smallest schools, they can fit within inside each other both ways. So then you start getting into conversations of the pros and cons of each one. Again, it meets the least impact because both buildings are in that 200 range. It allows for merging and growth. It's the smallest number of students. We're able to keep students together. And because of the proximity of both of those buildings, we don't see it as a hardship on any families. They're not being bused to some further distance. The next slide just again reiterates the classroom sizes and the number of sections needed. And I just want to go back over one of the topics we talked about in our committee, and I know I presented at the board meeting as well. There's a difference between sections and contractual class sizes. So by merging these 2 schools together, we're not suddenly going to have higher class sizes than anywhere else in the district. We still stick within our contractual class sizes, and then we also have goal areas. So that would be the same as, again, that equity piece. Right now, because the 2 buildings are separated, you have some very, very, very low class sizes, which of course, from an employer standpoint, that's not very efficient. Of course, we would all love it. The whole world could be super small class sizes, but that's just not the nature of the funding system in Michigan. So again, the goal is to make sure we have at least 3 sections for each grade level, which would be 18. So the next slide shows you if you were to merge Naldred to Sugar Bush. Again, I just want to state that it can fit. Probably the biggest downside to it is that it only leaves 4 available classrooms at Sugar Bush. Naldred is actually a larger footprint. It's important to note what of the other things that are located inside Naldred. They do have a Young Fives classroom. They currently have 4 Home ISD classrooms, 2 ECSC, 1 ECC. There's 136 students, and they currently have 8 K-5 classrooms. So in looking at this, it doesn't allow much room for growth. Sugar Bush is better suited for rentals or any licensed programs because of the updates that were done there. So Sugar Bush remaining open and the repurposed school makes more sense than Naldred. And Sugar Bush is not a border school. So the flip side, of course, is if you were to merge Sugar Bush into Naldred, you do see that we have 2 CI classrooms. And just to remind everybody, CI classrooms are the only ones of those alternate classrooms, well, and Young Fives, I should say, that have to be in a K-5 building. They have to be able to go into gen ed classrooms. So the committee did look at locations where the 2 CI could go if we didn't merge them with whichever 2 merged together. And we do have space for them within the district. By doing that scenario, it does leave 8 available classrooms. Some of the considerations there, of course, is there's more room for growth. So on that hierarchy of the 4 goal areas, it is better suited for the kindergarten rooms, and it is a border school. So again, for long-term financial savings, some could argue when you're next to a bordering neighborhood, if you could go elsewhere much easier. So the next slide is our just important tasks. Not that you don't already know this, and not that you're probably not hearing from our teachers and our staff, but tonight you're hearing this again. The hope, of course, would be that you would make a final decision. As I started at the beginning, it is an emotional decision. Our staff are all professionals. They're going to get through this just fine, but they like to plan. They like to be organized. They like to know how to pack their stuff, where they're going, where they're going to be next year. So the sooner we're able to do that, obviously, the better. So that we can get to work on the operational sides. What does the movement look like? How much support can we give them? What kind of timelines would we do? It also helps us in planning summer programs. If we want to allow time for those teachers who are going to have to pack the building, not to have something else in their classroom. We want to make sure we communicate with our parents And most importantly, allow some quality time for transition activities in which the two schools can, as much as COVID would allow, do some activities together, whether that's in written communication, Zoom meetings, notifications, that sort of thing. So they start to become a unified group. So with that, I can leave it up to you guys to have a discussion. You can ask myself, or I know Terry's here, we have Brian Powers who's on the committee, Todd, if there's anything that you need from us.
How much is this saving us?
I mean, we basically say between 600 and 800,000. We'll put the pen to paper as soon as it happens, but we're very comfortable with that approximation.
Just to me, it looks like Sugar Bush would be easier school to close as far as being able to put into Lighthouse being Calder being the bigger district. But one thing that I do worry about is this guys being moved in, and I'm looking at the right side of the committee, and it looks like nobody from the special ed program was on there to consider what kind of challenges they were going to have. And I could be wrong on that.
Yeah, we did have a special ed parent. We also had Frank Cusmano with us.
Frank's not on the list.
We didn't, administrators were at every meeting,
That's
but
fair.
we tried to not let our voices be
No,
more of
that's
a
perfect. I
sounding
just wanted to
board.
make sure that was.
And I will give you this background. We got down to 2 decision points there. Again, administration will make that decision once the board makes their final decision. We'll let you know. But one train of thought is, do you move the CI kids? And you can move them with whichever group they go to. And that's doable under both scenarios. Of course, if you do move them to Sugar Bush and Maldred's the one you close, you're now really closing your gap on growth. If it goes the other way, there's space. But one thing that both Frank and some of the special ed, and Terry's here can respond to this as well, is moving CI over to Lottie, because now Lottie becomes our smallest building. And so those CI kids, as we know, they come with a lot of challenges, and having a smaller building and a principal that can dedicate to that one specialized program is helpful. We try not to put like a CI program where you also have a lot of other programs that have a lot of parent needs. So that, again, those final decisions will be made, but we have 2 really good solid plans for the CI students.
Thank you.
Well, I'd like to, thank the administration and everybody that was on the right sizing committee for all their work in this, putting all the hard work, time and energy into putting this report together. And it's nice to see, I mean, I know last year when we were looking at, a lot of the budget cuts that we had to do, this was a big topic of conversation, one of the topics of conversation in the finance committee, and something we looked at, briefly as a possible cut, but it's really nice to have the community involved in it and to kind of come up and reinforce that is a move that makes sense. So, I mean, I would be ready to make that motion to consolidate Sugar Bush Elementary into Maldred Elementary to commence with the 2021-2022 school year.
I second that motion.
All right.
Mr. Millsap, did you want to?
I have a question. When you looked at these areas, did you look at building permits, plat plans, or talk to the townships and city to see where the growth is coming?
Our principals have a lot of that information and told us what was going on. And I know that through Middle Cities, that report is where we started. And that's why we wanted to make sure we have enough room for growth, because there's been a lot of start and stops with permits. So you could kind of think one way, but this way we would get all of our schools into that 60th to 70th percentile of capacity. So we're still fine district-wide. We have plenty of space in the buildings that are opened.
So my concern is when we see the building boom going on district-wise, and you see the homes being built at Great Oaks, we had the issue in the past, is when you consolidate Sugar Bush and Maldred, you have no safety fuse to relieve Great Oaks at all. And you see Lighthouse is going to blow up in terms of growth here. So my concern is, if we did this in the past, is strategically, you go to the townships and the cities and see where the growth is coming. So your plan puts everything average between 70 to 80%, saying we're good for growth, but individual buildings, you have no, for example, that's if the property across from Great Oaks, it takes 50, 60 students to put that over capacity, so.
That's
that
also
subdivision-
still having the dedicated spaces, so a lot of them have extra dedicated spaces that
No, I understand, but I
And
just said
then-
you, but you didn't go to the townships or cities and get there.
I did not go to the townships, but
Right.
Middle Cities looks at.
Middle
that
cities,
information.
it doesn't go to the townships and cities. Middle cities looks at the
Birth
birth
rates.
rates, it doesn't look
Growth.
at building permits, and you know, district-wide, the amount of homes going up, and then also in Lacan's, I mean, they've got a huge subdivision going on there, a shortcut road, but you see the building going on next to City Park, you see the Windridge subdivision, there's a subdivision that's expanding, and if you go to the township, there's lots of areas that are gonna expand, and when you just put an average out there, you should have considered, it should have been a consideration to shift some of that populations.
Redistricting is what you're
Great Oaks,
talking.
I'm just telling you, the Great Oaks is gonna be a problem because you're.
We would agree, redistricting is a whole different follow acts. The committee that we were doing was clearly consolidating a building,
I
but if-
understand, but when you
redistricting
consolidate
is-
those buildings, you eliminate the ability to take care of the capacity issues you're gonna have. It's just a strategic, if you just wanna say, take a snapshot today, 5 years ago, I'd certainly agree, but today it's, you know, you're just putting we really tried to put plans together that lasted more than 5 to 6 years, and this is gonna be a problem, I think. That's my,
Well,
opinion. I mean, that's my opinion.
Certainly, our schools of choice can play into this conversation as well. We have a number of students that are selecting, buildings through schools of choice. That would be within the district. So, for example, if I live in, the Sugar, I'm just giving you an example, but if I lived in the Sugar Bush Home School District and I wanted to go to Great Oaks, in some cases we granted that. We may not have that near as much flexibility to do that in the future. But I do think this is, a potential redistricting conversation that you raise. I think that although I understand your point that, by consolidating the school districts, it may give us less flexibility. But I think that, if we do have significant growth in certain areas of the district, we may have to have in the future a conversation about redistricting. I think that's a possibility.
Because you're at your low end of your enrollment, you're putting buildings at 80%, it's gonna be a problem.
I guess I have a question more about the R&M and the current buildings that we're discussing. Just from a financial perspective and facilities maintenance perspective, how are the roofs? How are parking lots? How are our boilers? Did we factor that into? Now, obviously, we've narrowed it down to 2, but if we're at those 2, financially and in terms of maintaining a building, which building am I better being on?
And Corey did, I can give you Ream's paper, the history of every boiler. We went through all that. There was not a significant change between the 2 that she could identify. Now, was Naldred scheduled for some of the updates in the next bond issue or remaining bond funds? Yes. So, it is a cycle. So you could easily argue that Sugar Bush does have some updated items that Naldred does not. So I can't give you 100%. Pardon?
Conducive to use.
Yes.
Back to Sugar Bush.
The reason that, one of the pros that leads to leaving Sugar Bush open for repurposing is just that reason. They have some updated that some of our licensing would be better suited in there than Naldred. So again, that hits 2 areas, which is the financial part. When we look at long-term financial savings, we also look at revenue generation. And so in the repurposed school, we might have some better revenue generation.
Just to clarify, I guess for the public, we're consolidating these. We're not selling off one or the other.
No.
They're going to be maintained by Anchor Bay. They're going to be fully operational buildings, if you will.
Which really goes to kind of Steve's point too, when you talk about the capacity, we still have those ECSC young, we have a lot of those that we do have in other, but we can put them in the repurposed building. So again, the good problem to have would be if in fact all those kids move in through schools of choice, we can control some. And then also moving some of those other programs under one roof, which some would argue gives you efficiencies. So there's efficiencies, but then there's also one of the reasons you strategically put them around the district is ease of parents. So you can kind of go both ways on that when you need to.
Yeah, for example, at Lighthouse, we have 2 ECSE programs. You know, we could easily move those, which would instantly free up 2 classrooms at Lighthouse as just an example of kind of what Anita's talking to.
I had a question. I already know the answer, but to clarify for our stakeholders, why was McDonald Elementary not considered as a part of this?
Because McDonald Elementary is already closed as an elementary school. So you don't really save anything there. We do have administration there. We do have 2 Great Start and is it just Great Start, Head Start? Head Start programs there. You know, we don't have a building principal. We don't have a full-time custodian. There's no students, so you're not getting any efficiencies by collapsing sections. So, you know, you wouldn't really get any savings. I believe it was closed 10 years ago, 8. It's been a while. So that was done already.
Well, and to speak to that a little bit, you know, much of the savings ends up coming through staffing costs in a sense. You know, having a principal or a dedicated custodian or different staffing needs. Now, some of that can be offset by the buyout that we have approved so that we are limiting, you know, the downsizing that would come with doing this. So, you know, it was a little bit timing with this buyout as well. Because certainly McDonald doesn't have a principal and some of those things that would cause the cost savings that we're looking for.
I would just, to Mr. Middlestad's point, we have looked at that. I know I personally looked at the building where the growth and the construction is forecasted for right now. And a lot of it seems to be in the north end of our district. And that's where obviously you got McCons, and then you also have, to bring up McDonald, you have that out there if need be. When it comes to the building and the maintenance, that was something we went over again last year as far as between the 2 different buildings. And like I said, to have the parent group kind of look at it and come to the same consensus, I think is the ideal situation. We all know that there's an issue over there, and it's a way that we could save some money for right now, repurpose it, whatever we do with it. You know, all options on the table, but it's something that if it ever were to need to go back to a school, we could do it. So.
And I'd be remiss if I mean, I just feel, to be fully transparent of the committee, you know, it's hard. We went into it with right sizing, consolidation, specific least number of students, closing a building. That was our focus. But you do have another committee that's right on its heels, which is balancing your 2 middle schools. So, I mean, but that's a different conversation. And I don't think we would have gotten this work done, obviously through Zoom too. Let me tell you, that's much trickier than when you put people in a room and put them at small tables and you have principals there talking to them. And so they had a huge learning curve via Zoom. But that's really the next thing. And it does speak to there are people that do schools of choice into Great Oaks, you know, trying to hope for a certain track, and that, you know, other districts have had to put moratoriums on in-district schools of choice to balance. I mean, those are all things that the board can decide when those priorities present themselves.
So you're looking at balancing middle schools?
We did not, but I'm saying they did bring it up. It was definitely brought up because they're
Either balancing or consolidating.
no, the consolidation doesn't work size-wise. Mr. McDonald can talk to that. We don't really feel we could.
Well, we didn't really go down that avenue, so.
Fully, right, you're right.
Look at it a little closer before I spoke to it. I believe you're right.
So the motion is by Mr. Drew to consolidate Sugar Bush Elementary into Dean Naldra Elementary. And that was seconded. Mr. Moses, thank you. Okay, we can call the roll.
Mr. Drew,
Yes.
Mr. Moses.
Yes.
Ms. Bergmeyer.
Yes.
Mr. Green.
Yes.
Ms. Knox.
Yes.
Mr. Richards.
Yes.
Mr. Middlestate.
Motion passes. So now we're going to move into planning for the future. We have some award recommendations to upgrade domain servers from the Microsoft System Center configuration server.
And only because Tim has to be the wizard behind the screen. He's really the one that did the lion's share of work on this. Chris, did I bring the right thing? So Tim could certainly answer any specific questions you might have, and Corey also was very involved in the lighting. So the first one is the award recommendation to the servers. And we are looking at, pardon?
I so moved to.
Support.
So the recommendation, I'll just read quickly, is to award the upgrade of the district domain servers and system center to Avalon in the amount of $38,274 out of bond funds. Avalon has completed work in the district previously and is a known vendor to us. So a motion that was made by Mr. Middlestat, supported by Mr. Green. Any questions from board members? Again, this is from bond funds that we still have remaining. All right, go ahead and call
Mr.
the roll.
Middlestate, yes. Mr. Green.
Yes.
Ms. Bergmeyer.
Yes.
Mr. Moses.
Yes.
Ms. Knox.
Yes.
Mr. Richards.
Yes.
Mr. Drew.
Yes.
And then the next one is for an upgrade to high school lighting in the auditorium.
For $90,877.08 also from bond funds, and this is to Fantasy lighting. And this is a situation where everything is outdated, that we have no choice.
So move that we award the upgraded high school lighting system to Fantasy Lighting 9877.08.
I'll second.
Okay, motion is Mr. Middlestat, second and Mr. Moses. Any questions?
After sitting on that stage for all those meetings over there, I don't know why we need additional lights because those were hot. And
Maybe that's why.
But if that's what we need to maintain our, auditorium as a top-notch auditorium, then I was gonna support that.
Okay, call the roll, please.
Mr. Middlestate, yes. Mr. Moses.
Yes.
Ms. Bergmeyer.
Yes.
Green.
Yes.
Ms. Knox.
Yes.
Mr. Richards.
Yes.
Mr. Drew.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm at the age where I need glasses and it was fogging up, so I
You're okay,
apologize
don't
for
worry about
that.
it. All right, we will move into open forum. So,
Sorry, Ms. Berg, I have one question. You mentioned, I've got Corey here, maintenance. What are we doing officially with Corey? I know with Andy leaving, I haven't heard anything official, so I know that she's doing the job and doing it well. I just see her as maintenance supervisor, so you announced or made a decision on that position, I guess. She's well deserved. I just never heard anything officially regarding that. That's the only question.
Yeah, I think the decision was made to promote her into that supervisory role. Yep.
All right, thank you.
So we'll move into open forum. So at this point, the public's invited to comment. And those who wish to participate, if you could state your name and your address, and you're welcome to participate in person or virtually today. And then just a reminder that comments about specific employees should be directed to them personally and not included in this forum. I have Mr. Powers in-house who would like to speak.
Brian Powers, 51792 Lesham Drive, Chesterfield. I was on the right size committee, so I just wanted to point out a couple things with regard to future growth. That was a huge topic that the committee discussed. We were not obtuse to the fact that there's a lot of construction going on and a lot of building going on. And we factor that into a lot of our discussions. And I think one of the things that really put us on a path to make the recommendation we did is because we feel like putting it into Naldred opens up a lot of options for quick growth that may not even be expected, let alone what we already knew we had coming. So we feel that this plan can accommodate the growth that's going on in the district right now as a committee. And then secondly, in case it wasn't clear, I just want to make sure everybody knows that once our committee discussions got down to the point where a lot of the discussions were centered around Naldred and Sugarbush, we had the building administrators from both of those schools in our meeting, actively involved in those discussions, giving the committee a lot of input, correcting us when we were making assumptions that weren't necessarily correct, adding in things that we may not have been considering. So they had a lot of input. So I just don't want anybody to think that it was a bunch of people who may not be involved in those buildings, making assumptions and making a decision. The people who know those buildings best were actively involved in those discussions. So that's just all I wanted to add.
Thank you. Are there any virtual comments?
Krista Ortega.
Yep, I'm here. With the right size situation, I know Ms. Knox had asked about McDonald Elementary. We did in-district school of choice when my son was in kindergarten. He's now a senior. And back in that day, all-day kindergarten wasn't an option at every elementary school. So he went to McCont's. So I believe it was around second or third grade when McDonald got absorbed into McCont's. It was a very smooth transition, just so that you know that. So as we're kind of looking at doing the same thing with Sugarbush and Ardelette, I really don't think we're going to find that it's not a smooth transition. So even if we see growth in the north, and need to open McDonald again, or vice versa with Sugarbush and too much at Great Oaks, just so all the board knows that, we have that ability to do that, and go back to using the buildings that we do own. So that's the only comment I have for that. You guys have a great night and congrats on the superintendent. Thank you.
We have Jackie.
Yes, hi. With the right sizing, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, good. With the right sizing, in regards to Sugarbush moving into Naldred, there was mention of the CI program. Is that officially going to Naldred, or there was something about it going to Lottie? I couldn't quite, I didn't know if that was decided yet. In regards to the CI program, a lot of the support staff that services the ECSE preschool rooms also services the CI rooms, and a lot of those support staff do have to travel between the buildings, sometimes in the same day. I do think it would be really beneficial to have the CI program in the same school building as one of the ECSE buildings, but I know that there are a lot of other factors. But when would we have word on where the CI classes would be going?
Yeah, so an official decision has not been made as to where we will place the CI programs. We are looking at a couple different alternatives, and we will have communication about that shortly. I think that we do understand there are synergies with our other special ed programs, so we will try and factor those in as we make that decision.
Okay, thank you.
I do not see anybody else.
Okay, so we don't have any other submissions, and so at this point, I will take a motion to adjourn. Okay, motion by Mr. Moses, supported by Mr. Giroux.
Oh, remember first, we should be able to do that, right? Yeah. Everybody's here, right?
Sure. All in favor? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All right, meeting is adjourned at 8:23. Have a good night.